We're here in week 4 of this season's ZRL racing, and this week we're in Yorkshire for 2 laps of a very, very difficult and potentially tricky Tour of Tewit Well course. I have to be honest, I wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to make it to the finish line today. What might have worked in my favour was that this, in fact, was our second scratch race of the series. So there were no points available at any of the KOMs. We're not going through any of the sprint segments here today. But all points were basically on the finish line. So I had a very, very simple plan, was do as little as I possibly could, work as little as I could, and just try to stay in touch with that front group. It was going to be a tough ask. I am towards the heavier end. I mean, I'm in that kind of over 80 kilo category, which for in the grand scheme of things isn't that heavy, but for a cyclist is towards the heavier end. So I was just going to have to dig in, really, grit my teeth, try as best I could to hold on over the hills, and if I could, do what I could at the finish. I wasn't feeling great, I have to be honest. I had a recovery week last week after sort of 4 quite hard weeks, and I always find that after a recovery week, it probably takes another week to actually kind of get back into the swing of things. So this really was my first big effort since taking that sort of quieter week. So after just 700 meters, we're on to the first KOM of the race. Like I said, there are no points available at the top, but it was sure to be the first point on this very attritional course where a selection would be made. I really expected the group to probably not far off half in size here, so it was very important to kind of make sure that I was at the right side of any splits. You can see me here sitting quite close towards the front of the group. I was having a little bit of difficulty. My avatar was having a bit of difficulty here, kind of getting back into the draft of the pack. I tend to, on climbs, I like to sit towards the front of the group, just with that hope to give myself a little bit of sliding room, so that as we kind of approach the finish, the finish of the climb, I mean, if I am really, really gassed, what I'm hoping is that by sitting towards the front of the pack, I will have that kind of tail effect where the riders start stringing out. I hopefully got a bit of sliding room that as we hit the top of the climb, I'll be able to just to kind of keep hold of that main group. You can see up in the mini map there how the pack is starting to stretch. It hasn't been a crazy hard effort. I have to say I was kind of expecting it to be a bit harder at this point. I thought people would put in a bit more power early on. It's probably been I've probably averaged around low 400 watts here to hold on. But like you can see up in the mini map there, the group really, really is stretched out. We're about a K into the climb now, and there is only a few hundred meters left. I was feeling it. I got to admit, I was thinking the legs are not here today. The legs, I thought they're really, really not here. But I knew at this point that I had made that first split on the first feature that we have here today. So across the KOM finish line, there's 2 power-ups for the riders here today, and they're not designated to specific banners, sorry. You will get them randomly, but you will either get feather or the anvil. I was quite glad, to be fair, that I picked up the feather, because we've got the extremely steep and very, very difficult pot bank climb coming just a couple of K down the road. So I was quite thankful, really, that I've picked up a feather that I can use for to kind of try and assist me a little bit on that climb. I just thought I'd speed the footage up here to not bore you too much. You can see lots and lots of riders dropping anvils on the descent there and heading towards the front of the group. I was just trying to do my absolute best. Again, do the minimum wattage I possibly can and just try and get as much recovery as I possibly can. Just as we hit the bottom of the descent, we're straight on to the next climb. Almost like an uncategorized sort of rise here, but it's 7-8% for about a kilometre. So again, a really tricky effort. It did start stretching the group slightly, but really I think a lot of riders were trying to keep their powder dry, so to speak, for the pot bank that was soon to be upon us. Thankfully, I've hit the crest of this bit of a climb here. Still well sat towards the front of the pack, and now again it's just the same kind of process for myself. I'm just thinking, right, I've made this one. That's another little finish line ticked off. It's now a case of doing the minimum that I can, letting the sort of the draft effect of the group carry me along, and do the minimum power that I possibly can to kind of just sit towards the front there and just get as much recovery as I can before I know that we've got that really, really tough 22% climb of pot bank. The descent does steepen here slightly to sort of -5, -6%. So a really nice place to get out of the saddle on the bike, stretch out the legs, and just try and get that last bit of recovery in, really, before we hit pot bank. Just slowed the footage down here, but we're heading on to the initial 22% gradient of the pot bank climb. I had chosen to actually try and hold my feather until just as we get around this corner, with the hope being that a lot of riders hit their feathers right at the bottom, and I was hoping that just delaying slightly, even though it's very, very steep at the bottom of the climb, we did have the speed of the descent taking us into it, and I thought that just actually holding on, because it's still 14-15% at this section, and actually triggering the feather power up a little bit later would hopefully give me a bit of an advantage as other riders' power ups were kind of coming to an end. We're now over the steepest part of the pot bank, but the gradient is still around 8-9%. I've managed to keep myself right towards the front of the group. We're looking at about a 90-second to 2-minute effort here, which I know I can do. I know I can do that at probably touching maybe 500 watts if I need to. So to see my power down kind of in the high 300s at this point was quite a relief, really. Just doing what I need to sit again towards the front of the pack, because I don't want to get caught out by any splits happening. But just try and sort of surf the wheels, do enough power to keep me towards the front, but not so much power that I'm actually out in the wind and not getting any draft benefit from the other riders. As you can see from the image of the group in the mini map there, we've probably split again in half. Some of those riders will make it back to us as we get onto the slightly flatter ground. But we are now over the kind of the worst of the climb, so to speak. It still continues at a couple of percent. It rises and falls by a few percent here. But we really are over the kind of the harder section of that pot bank. It's now just a case of doing as little as possible, yet again, for myself. That's another little mini finish line then, so to speak, ticked off. I'm now aiming just to do as little as I can, recover as best as I can, and basically go again on the next lap. Really see there how stretched that group is. Just as we rounded that corner, there were little groups of 2 and 3 riders sort of scattered all over the road. It really was a very, very much an attritional race, this, and it was more a case of hanging on rather than a group breaking away. And the group would sort of, after every kind of feature, every little climb, every sort of rise, we would lose riders. So our front group, which started at 78, has gradually got smaller and smaller, and we now have probably less than half the field remaining. Just brought the pace of the footage back up again and skipped through this this sort of section. This is probably the flattest part of this course. It really isn't a particularly flat course in any parts, but at least it's here. It's around 0%, maybe plus or minus kind of 1 or 2% here. But you can see up the road ahead there is yet another short kicker. This is only a few hundred meters long, but coming so soon after that pot bank, it really is going to be yet another stinger. I've done quite a good job, again, heart rate down in the 150s, of just doing, again, the minimum power that is needed, get the recovery in, and then, again, just kind of dig in up this little section here. The finish rider there, Yavian, if I'm saying his name correctly, kind of is doing a little bit of an effort off the front, but he soon backs that down, back into the 4 watt per kilo sort of area. And we soon caught him and just were able to back off and just enjoy what is now quite a nice little couple of kilometre descent down to that kind of start finish line before we hit on to our next lap of the Tour of Tewit Well. I thought I could take this opportunity here to just briefly discuss what my own personal fueling strategy is for these tough Zwift races. I like to take a gel about 5 minutes before the start, and then in my bottle that I'm sipping throughout the event, put a bit of a carbohydrate mix in there. So we're looking at 23 grams of carbs in the gel, and then there's 50 in the carbohydrate drink mix. But for a harder race such as this one today, I'm also quite like to take another gel at the sort of the halfway point. So this is roughly just under halfway here, and it's an easier section. So I use this opportunity here just to take another gel on that descent to try and set myself up for the final lap. So just crossed the start finish line there, and I'm now beginning lap 2. Unfortunately, I've actually picked up an Anvil power up, which is not ideal. I mean, I was hoping for another feather just to try and help me just ease the climb, the upcoming climb. It's a nice little descent here again, just a great opportunity to back off, stretch the legs out before we turn and hit some initially very, very steep gradients here. I think it goes up to sort of 15% briefly, and we're on to that KOM climb. The first time up, the group didn't go overly hard, and I'm to be honest, I'm hoping for something similar. The efforts we've put into to now on some of those climbs, just hanging on, have really, really taken it out on my legs. But I'm just trying to use that same tactic again, try and sit close to the front of the group, to give myself some of that sliding room if I need it, but to not try and sit actually on the front of the group. Again, I don't want to be doing any unnecessary work. I just want to do the minimum I can just to kind of sit in and yet again, I mean, I sound like a broken record here, but really for myself today, the aim is just to survive, and if I can survive, hopefully I'll be able to sprint come the finish line. It's been quite a similar type climb to the first time up. When I checked back on the data after the race, what I found is that the first lap and the second lap, the actual average power was very, very comparable for me. I did have to go slightly harder on the second effort, but you were looking at about a 2 minute climb, and I've averaged I think I averaged 400 watts, or just over 400 watts. For the 2 ascents of the KOM there. Just before I crossed the finish line, the KOM finish line, I just hit my Anvil with the hope that it would give me a little bit of assistance on the descent here. But by triggering it before the actual banner, it meant that I could actually pick up another power up. And thankfully, this time I have picked up a feather. So my aim with the feather was to again save that on this little bit of the uncategorized then rise here, to not use it and actually trigger it on the pot bank, and hopefully again it would just allow me to that little bit of respite just to kind of sit in the group. I just chopped the video there, a couple of minutes out, nothing much happened, just took it easy down the descent, and here we are again at the base of the pot bank climb. Our group is slightly smaller again, it's still a reasonable size, we've got around 40 riders, and I'm trying to just hold on to that featherweight a little bit. I did trigger it a bit earlier here. There's an awful lot of orange numbers, and I felt that I needed to go hard early. I think my watts were well up over 600 watts, and I'm kind of over that first 30 seconds or so of the climb, I averaged well over 600 watts. Just trying to sit in. There was a lot of orange numbers early from a lot of riders. You can still see it that there's a lot of riders have got in excess of 7 watts a kilo there towards the front of the group. So it was taking quite a big effort here to actually sit in. Heart rate up at 197, and I have to be honest, I really wasn't feeling good. I was sort of thinking that this could actually be me. If this group, the riders at the front of the group here don't ease up, it's quite likely that I'm going to pop. The mini map, you can see the group is very, very stretched. It's just split in there. There's probably less than half of the riders at the front of that split. Some of those riders will get back on. A lot of them won't. And our front group here was cut to around 20 riders, so significantly smaller than what we hit the base of the pot bank there with. Heart rate up 198. Very, very, very tough effort. But thankfully, I have made it. I have just about made it. And I am in touch with this front group here. They're not letting up. I mean, I'm still putting out near on 400 watts there, just to kind of maintain the draft. But I'm hoping that we'll soon be on that slight descent, and I'll be able to get a little bit of good rest in, really, just to try. There was one more. Now in my mind, I've ticked off yet another sort of checkpoint, if you like, with the pot bank. So it's now a case of just surviving that short rise that you've got about 2.5k out from the finish line before the long descent to the finish. My focus now was really on doing the minimum that I could here again, try and get as much recovery as possible, just to make sure that I can try and get over that short climb. So the last few minutes passed by fairly uneventfully. I've managed to get my heart rate back down into the 160s, which for me is fairly low. And we just as we hit the base of that climb, that rise, I should say, 2.6k to go, riders start attacking. It was for me then, I'm thinking, oh no, really, I was hoping that a lot of the riders were going to take it easy. I knew that there were going to be a lot of awful tired legs in this group. So I thought, right, okay, what I didn't want to happen, I did not want to get tailed off. I didn't want to get sort of cut out the back with a couple of drop riders in this group. So I thought I need to do a bit of an effort here, but I really, we're close to the finish line at 2.2Ks here, but we're not right on top of the finish line. I knew I had to work, but I didn't want to put any unnecessary power in on the front. I was hoping that on that bit of a descent, our group here, our bigger numbers, would actually catch some of the early breakaway riders. You can see that 2 riders there have gone off the front. There's a rider for the coalition team, and another one. Apologies, didn't see who it was there. That have managed to get. I think that at this point they've got about a 5-second advantage, which since the new pack dynamics that we've had, the 4.1. I mean, it's now on 4.1.1. A lot of breakaways are surviving. I mean, I would say that in all the Zwift races that I'm doing since the new pack dynamics are in place, I actually think that about half of those, I reckon, are actually finishing with a breakaway victory. So for myself, it's something that I don't personally like. I'd always be the type of rider I'd rather sit in for a sprint if I can help it. But for those type of riders who've got more of the ability then to break away from a group, it seems to be a really great advantage for them. You can see VT from the coalition there has got now 9 seconds, and M. Brunner is just behind him, but he's still 7 seconds ahead of the group. On this descent, I'm just trying to do the bare minimum I can to basically get the legs back in place before the sprint. To be honest, the rest of the group have just sat up. The group that I'm in here, I mean, I could not chase. I didn't have the legs to try and chase those 2 breakaway riders. My legs were gassed, just hanging on, and there doesn't seem to be much of a desire really in our group here to chase them down. So 600 meters from the line, and I'm still just sitting in. And as soon as I see on the rider list on the right hand side, I see an orange number, and I know that basically now it's time to follow. Now it's time to follow. We're 400 or so meters away, and it's time to kick. Put in a reasonable sprint there. I hit just under 1200 watts, which is decent enough power, but I am so gassed. I really tail off. Really tail off. I notice Brunner just up ahead of me, and I think, yeah, maybe we can get him, and just about pass him, and I thought I had let off the gas a little bit early there, but it was quite relieving that when I come across the finish line, I'd still held on for third, and actually in second place was Michael Colros, who is also another Kirchmeier teammate. So for us this week, 2 Kirchmeier riders in the top 5, which is our best performance from any of the rounds so far. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll be back for round 5.